Well, I'm joined as ever this week by Super Bowl winning head coach Brian Billick in association with X-Tech Pads. Coach, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Good week of football.
It absolutely was fantastic. Some really exciting games in that early slate. But I wanted to start off with Monday Night Football and that Bears-Rams game. And something that came out during the game, actually. As you know, players, coaches, and star players are always interviewed beforehand by the broadcast crew, and they kind of get a feel of the camp, and they can use those quotes in the analysis. And Brian Greasy came out with quite an interesting quote, which I'll read in full here. When he had his conversation with Nick Foles, he said that Nick Foles told him, "Sometimes play calls come in, and I know that I don't have time to execute that play call, and I'm the one out here getting hit. And sometimes the guy calling plays, Matt Nagy, he doesn't know how much time there is back there. So that's something they have to get worked out." Now, what was kind of your initial reaction to this? Because I think for a lot of people, there were alarm bells ringing if there's an apparent disconnect between the quarterback and the offensive play caller.
Yeah, frankly, I thought it was a cheap move by Brian Greasy. I mean, you do those production meetings and you're trying to get a general background for what's going on. I don't know what really comes out of it. And Nick Foles, I think, talking to a guy he probably was very familiar with or had played with, basically saying, yeah, you know how it is. Sometimes calls come in and it's like, no, we don't have time for that. That give and take between the quarterback and the play caller happens all the time. You have a game plan, you're from the sideline. No, as a coach, you're not in the game. And it's incumbent upon your quarterback to say, Coach, that 7-step drop, I don't think we have time for that. I'm getting killed back here. So I think it was an innocent enough comment. I thought it was unprofessional for Brian Greasy to put it on air, given the context. And then afterwards, they kind of kissed and made up and say, oh, no, this is just the normal give and take between quarterback and play caller. So I don't know that it's a big deal. I know Matt Nagy thinks a lot of Nick Foles. They've been together. He'd been waiting to put him in anyway. Nick Foles is happy to be the starter. I think it's probably much ado about nothing and kind of a bush league move by Brian Greasy.
Yeah, it's interesting. Nick Foles afterwards kind of put it down to a miscommunication. And I guess you do want that relationship between the play caller and the quarterback to have a conversation. We saw in the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes calling the famous play himself that went to Tyreek Hill and kind of sparked that offense in that game. I mean, shouldn't a quarterback and a play caller have that relationship? You just don't want there to be a disconnect.
Sure. One of the things you do late in the week is sit down with your quarterback going, okay, what do you like here? What are you not feeling? In critical situations, tell me your fit. Typically when a quarterback comes off to the sideline in between series or during a timeout, as a play caller, you're going to look at the quarterback and go, okay, you want to do this, or this? What do you think? Part of that is vesting him in the process, that now he's going to put his stamp on it and go out and be a little more responsible for the play. That's the normal give and take. And there's going to be times that you disagree. There's times that the play caller tries to sell a quarterback on a play, hey, give this a chance, because I think it could be really good. And there's time the quarterback's going, hey, I just don't like this play, or no, call this play. I like this better. And that's a normal give and take.
I guess the relationship as well with Nagy and Foles goes back quite a way. So you don't think this will be a big issue because they're both veteran guys. They know each other well.
Yeah, it's not an issue. They've been playing well, and when you're winning, it's not an issue. The same thing was true even when they were winning. There's times we're going, you know what? I don't think I like this play, or we don't have enough time for it. But anytime after a loss, then all of a sudden, it jumps into that category of players jumping on the soapbox going, I confess he did it.
So let's move on to a team that is coming off a loss and seemingly have issues of their own in the Dallas Cowboys. We obviously saw in that game that Andy Dalton was knocked out by a hit from John Bostic, a late hit, which he was ejected for, and Dalton was out of the game with concussion. Now, Mike McCarthy's quote after the game was quite interesting. He said, "We speak all the time about playing for one another, protecting one another. It definitely was probably not the response you would expect in terms of his own players not getting in Bostic's face and sort of saying, this isn't right, and protecting Dalton." What would you have made of that if you were Mike McCarthy in that situation and the Dallas response?
Not a healthy situation, because you remember the week before you had some anonymous players making comments. They didn't think they were prepared, or the coaches were doing a very good job. And now you got a coach taking a shot back at the players. This is not a healthy situation. These are all things, as Mike McCarthy said, when the anonymous player made a comment, you need to come to me man to man. Let's talk about it. We don't want to air these things. And Mike, it's not like he sought that out. Someone asked the question and he just gave an honest response. But this is not a good situation in Dallas. And it's one that's going to have to be handled by not only Mike McCarthy, but Jerry Jones. Most owners don't talk during the season, and that's good. Because once you do, then when you don't, people read a lot into it. And the really good organizations, the longtime organizations of winning, usually don't. Well, Dallas is different. Jerry Jones is up front. He has radio shows. He's in the middle of that. So there's no dialing that back, and he's going to comment. But now it's going to be up to him and Mike McCarthy and Stephen Jones to a degree to hang together and make sure the players understand, look, this is who we are. This is the staff we're going to have. I mean, God bless the NFC East. They're a half a game out. I mean, as bad as they are, they're fortunately in the right division that they can still kind of keep in touch. But it's going to take all hands on deck in terms of Mike McCarthy, Jerry Jones, and Stephen Jones to make sure the players understand, no, this is the way we're operating.
Did you have any instances of that when you were a coach of a quarterback taking a cheap hit like that? And I'm wondering what the response is, because I can imagine what the response would have been if that had been a Ravens-Steelers game. And
yeah, we had a different personality, and I don't know that you want to be doing that to any of our players, because that group would have burned up in a New York second.
Fantastic. Just moving on to next week, obviously November 3rd, a big date in America, not just because of the presidential election, but the NFL trade deadline is that day as well. We've already seen teams making moves this week. I'm just wondering, as a head coach, how difficult it is to game plan around the trade deadline when you might be losing players, you might be gaining players.
It's a tense time for every organization because players wonder, could I end up going someplace else? It didn't used to be a lot. It's not like in baseball where you see trades all the time, basketball, because of the number of games, because of the number of players, because of the cap ramifications. It's hard to trade a player because of the cap ramifications. It has become more and more frequent over the last couple of years. So not near as much as baseball or basketball, but still one where the players are kind of, putting an eye over the shoulder going, am I going to get a tap on my shoulder? It's a very uncomfortable time, but it is the business side of it. You look at it both ways, an opportunity maybe to gain a player that could really help you if you think you're on that cusp. Also an opportunity maybe to get some value for a player that is going to be leaving at the end of the year. So it's a tough time, but it's an interesting time.
I'm just wondering what it'd be like for the teams like Minnesota, for example. They traded for Yannick Ngakoue before the season, and then 6 weeks in, they're trading him already. I'm just wondering what that message kind of sends the players about the rest of this season when one of your star players is already being traded away.
It does. The fact that they traded for him, I don't know if there was an issue with Ngakoue there and it just wasn't fitting. One of the things you've got to be very, very careful of is that you don't appear, and your question alludes to it with Minnesota, that you're trading away the season. Okay, we're giving up on the season. We're going to try to go get some value. You better be careful of that, because then you have a whole bunch of players going, well, then why am I playing hard? Why should I put my career on the line? Why should I put the potential for injury out there if we're already throwing off the year?
Brilliant. And just one final one for me. I want to ask you about Baltimore. Obviously, Ngakoue is the guy they've got, and also added Des Bryant to the practice squad, who hasn't played in 3 years. Did you like those moves? What did you make of them?
Well, Ngakoue was a great move. They were minus that dominant pass rusher. They get most of their pressure from a lot of pressures and blitzes, safeties, corners, linebackers. But they're missing that one guy that protection has to account for. That'll be a good addition for them. Des Bryant, we'll see. What he's got left in the tank, what he can do, if he'll come in and buy in and be a part of that team and buy into the role that they're going to ask him. He's not going to come in and be the number one. And he's got to understand that. And he probably does. But he can be a situational player to go with Mark Andrews and Marquise Brown to where he could be a pretty good addition if he buys into it.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Coach, as ever. I'll let you go.
Sounds great.